Good evening. Welcome to Live United. Live United is the show where we share lots of things that are happening here in the Monadnock region that make a difference in the lives of our citizens. We don't always talk about the campaign that goes into really raising the funds that go out to the services that then meet the needs of the public here in the Monadnock region. So today we're doing a little bit different show, and we're really featuring our one of our volunteers. And our volunteers are what makes the difference out there. We talk about your donation being important, but the volunteers who actually go out and work on the campaign to raise those funds are just critical here in the region. So today I'm joined by one of our loaned employees, and I'm going to let them actually tell you more about what it means to be a loaned employee. But I'm joined by Jessica O'Brien. Jess is with Markham Homage, and we're very thankful to Markham Homage for loaning Jess to us. So Jess, tell us a little bit, what does it mean to be a loaned employee working on the Monadnock United Way campaign?
Well, to me, it means being part of something bigger than who you are by yourself or even who your business is by itself. It means being able to give back, and being able to give back in a way that's different than just donating the funds that I usually do as a leadership giver and have been for years and years. But to me, it's been very eye-opening. You feel more involved in the community. You feel so much more presence and so much more ability to do good for the community being a loaned employee.
So that's wonderful to hear. It sounds like you have a long history with the United Way. So how did you get involved originally with the United Way?
Well, it was something that came about at Markham Homage. Markham Homage has been a huge supporter of the United Way forever, and they also are have a strong presence in the community with how much they give back. But the campaign is very big at Markham Homage, and they don't push, but they give the ability for employees to donate and have very strong campaigns that last for a while in the fall. So that was my first, I would say the first time I became aware and involved with the campaign was when I started there.
So you started as a donor, and it sounds like you're a leadership giver now.
Yes.
Can you describe for our audience, because they may not know what a leadership giver is?
Okay, a leadership giver is a financial donation of $500 or more to the campaign. And so we've been doing that, like I said, for years upon years too. And just like everybody else in the community, focused on where you're giving and what you're doing, but also trying very hard as the campaign amount increases to also increase our donation so that we can continue to help.
And I know you're well aware that each year the need for more resources is there because our agencies are receiving cutbacks from federal and state levels. The need is increasing, particularly here in the Monadnock region as it relates to some of those basic needs, things like food and shelter, as the economy has taken a downturn. So we're all faced with having to really seek out more of those resources, find those leadership givers who are really almost half of the donations that are raised through the United Way campaign. Now, I know you're actually running some of the campaign activities, so tell us some of the things that you're doing.
At Markham Homage in particular, or all of the campaigns?
Just in general.
Okay, so I have 12 companies that I'm working with at the moment, and they run in range from 400 employees down to 3 or 5. So the way the campaigns are structured is very different depending on the company and what they're willing to do. Some of them have very low-key campaigns and 100% participation, and everybody's just involved in a quiet way, which is very good. Other campaigns promote fun activities, different prizes, different incentives. So we have Markham Homage and Melanson that give days off to employees for donating at a certain level. And you give incentives to people who have never given before. But at Markham Homage, we're also very focused this year on education. What does it mean? What does the United Way do? What do they support? And we have posters up around the whole plant, actually very focused on the places the employees go to, like the cafeteria or the restrooms, because we know people go there. But the posters have questions. Have you ever wondered what you would do if? or have you ever wondered how you would get here? So we have 50 posters up around the plant with all of the agencies that are funded this year by the United Way with a question. And a week after we put up the question, then we put up the answers. And so we have posters for each of those agencies on what the answers are, who they are, what they're all about. And our next step is to then put up more facts about the United Way, how many people they've served, some success stories. So we're building on the campaign as we go so that people can learn more and more and understand, because it's not so easy or so intuitive to know exactly what the 50 agencies are. So we're really pushing that this year. The other thing that we're trying very hard to do is get the management team involved. And so we have a few ideas about how we can make it more fun, because fun is always good. And we have some managers who have volunteered to have pies in the face for one, if people pay to do that. We're looking at how we can have managers do the employees' jobs for a couple hours. And we're also looking at having the management team serve the employees' food. Take their order, serve them food, and then clean up after them as a way to donate toward the United Way.
That's a great way to engage people and have fun while you're doing it. And we know that fun is always something that does bring people in and really gets them involved. You mentioned that you're doing both the campaign inside Markham Homage, and you're using a theme
Yes.
this year. So
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about that as well?
The wonder theme has really resonated with me this year, because I think you don't wonder a lot of times. We're all so busy. I have 3 kids who are in all these activities, and you're running, and I don't have a lot of free time to sit and wonder about the needs of the community. But when you start looking at the brochure and looking at the theme, it really resonates too with moms because of the Dr. Seuss theme and the poems that we read to our kids all the time, right? Mm-hmm. But when you sit back and you go, no, I haven't wondered what I would do if I needed to have food, but other people have, and maybe they don't know that it's there and that it exists. So the wonder theme has really been, geez, I haven't wondered, but maybe I need to wonder a little bit more, and maybe I need to investigate a little bit more. So for me, the wonder theme has been very powerful.
And what's one of the unique things the Monadnock region does is has its own theme each year that they change. And this year's theme is the Wonder theme. And we have the Live United. The show is called Live United. Right. That's a national theme for United Ways. Really want to say to the audience that what you may not know is that when you donate to the United Way, that goes out to local services. That money stays here and makes a difference in the lives of citizens here. And I think sometimes people may not know that. They think they're giving, and because United Ways are worldwide, they don't realize that the money actually stays locally. And I know you've had a chance you went through some training time together, and you got to learn a little of the history of the United Way, which is kind of fun because it actually started out, it was a local initiative with a group of people who felt like in that time, back in the 1950s, folks used to go door to door seeking donations. So they decided to create this one ask. And they started the Red Feather Club. And then it evolved into a community chest and ultimately into the Monadnock United Way. But those dollars do stay local. You mentioned that wonder is resonating with people. With the smaller businesses, what are some of the challenges you're facing as you're out there trying to run your campaigns?
It seems to be tough most years with getting the word out, getting people to understand. But also, it's just a tough time, right? Everything is increasing. Salaries aren't increasing as much as the expenses. So how do you balance giving back with what is happening? And the smaller companies don't have as much leeway to provide the incentives that might actually pull some donors in. So places like Markham Homage and some of the other companies, they can give some incentives to pull people in. You really need to be working with them to get them to understand the benefit, how much it's actually used in the community. It wasn't well known to me that it's 1 out of 3 people in the community that use this. It also wasn't well known to me that how much the agencies speak to each other. If you go to see one agency and maybe they're not the right fit to help you, that agency will point you in the direction of another United Way agency. And because you have a network of the United Way in the Monadnock region, you can get a broad scope of services that you wouldn't otherwise know about if the agencies weren't talking and weren't communicating. So from a small business standpoint, it's just talking, getting there, speaking to people, having speakers so that people can understand what it's used for, how often it's utilized. So one of the companies that I went to and we had a kickoff campaign, we had a speaker. And the speaker told me while she was talking, she recognized some of the faces and that she had seen some of the people at the community kitchen, that they had utilized the services. And they were just in a small company. And she didn't obviously point them out or say anything, but after we were talking about it, and she said, you know, they have utilized some of the services and they've come in. And it's important to not recognize that in a negative way, but to say, you know, at least they knew. They were informed that they could go there, they could go to the community kitchen, and they could get some necessary help and some support.
Well, you know, those are our safety net out there, and there's different points in our lives that we have needs. We know, for example, that our senior population, that we have a growing senior population here in the Monadnock region, and with folks on fixed incomes, it can be difficult to make it to the end of the month. So we do see an increase need for some different types of services, whether it's the Keene Senior Center, the community kitchen, and even folks that aren't funded by the United Way. That safety net out there of service for our citizens is just so necessary because we never know when we're going to need it. And it may not in our lifetime that we need it, but it could be a family member, it could be a neighbor, it could be anyone that's a part of our lives. And I think that's the wonder piece that you're talking about. We don't often think, because it may not directly be affecting us, so we don't often think about it. But the reality is, as you mentioned, 1 in 3 people at some point in their lives may need that type of service. And that's what we're seeing this year. Over, in 6-month period, over 375,000 units of service provided out there. That's a lot of people who needed different types of things, whether it's just support or actual basic needs.
I started this process of being a loaned employee because I was asked to do it. And when people have said, why? You know, why are you doing this? Simply, it was because I was asked. And I'm not the type to say no to a lot of things, so I said, yes, of course I will. I'm a leadership giver, I have been for years. But the training, and throughout that week, was a huge bit of information, if you will, but also you start to remember. You know, my grandfather went to the Castle Center years ago and utilized that. My cousin utilizes the Friendly Bus and subsidized housing and some of the things that you need as part of the community, and you recognize it's there, right? It's everywhere. And I'm more impacted than I thought about when I said yes. You know, and you go in and go, well, yes, because it's the right thing to do. And then I go, oh, I forgot. You know, my family has used this service and we've utilized it as we go. And one of the things that was huge for me that week when we went to the agencies was recognizing just how dedicated the people that work at the agencies are. The directors that we talked to were so passionate about what they did and the people that they served. And they could speak to you for so long about everything that they provide, but it wasn't just, it was the energy that they provided and the passion about what they did, and they were so concerned and so dedicated and so willing to do what they could. And that resonated hugely with me. And it's a difference between being in the business sector and you go to work and you do stuff for your company and for your corporation. But they're actually seeing an impact every day when they go to work and what they do for the community and for the people. And you could not just see it, but you felt it in the way that they talked about it and how passionate they were. And I was very inspired by that.
And, you know, it's funny because we talk about without our volunteers, folks like you, we couldn't run the campaign. We couldn't then allocate that money out. It's all dependent on volunteers. It's funny because if you look at the United Way, we have about 4.5, 5.5 staff, you know, if you add it all up, because we have some part-timers and then we have, you know, 4 full-time staff. And it gets very interesting because we could never do the work that we do without the volunteers. We are absolutely reliant on folks like you, so we're thankful to have you. You know, you mentioned that Markham Homage, big supporter of the United Way, absolutely true. You know, giving you time as a loaned employee to actually work on the campaign and make it happen in 12 different businesses.
Right.
We've been talking about some of the challenges. Cam was on the show, our resource development director.
Right.
And Cam talked a bit about, you know, the mergers, the downsizing, the changing network of business here in the Monadnock region. And I know that's been challenging for some of our campaign leaders. But you have folks that work with you as volunteers. Can you talk a little bit about some of the folks that are working with you?
So we usually have what's called an employee campaign coordinator at the companies that we work with, somebody who's signed up to help. And they're the ones responsible for the internal campaign. So we speak to them and help them with ideas. What would you like to do? What do you think will resonate with your campaign, with your company? And it, depending on the size of the company, is how many volunteers you'll get with those companies or how many they need. So a company, say the size of EMF, has 5 or 6 employees, so they usually have one employee coordinator that talks to the employees, and it's a smaller size. But the volunteers still take the time to talk to the individual people, to talk to them about what's important about the United Way. Most of the companies will take the time to put it in a newsletter to communicate to the employees from the top how important it is. And having that support from the top of the business down is crucial to the employees understanding that this is a big deal. And then on the side of, Markham Homage, we have a team of 10 or 12 people every year that dedicate their time to getting the word out, to dropping off pledge cards to people, to being involved. And then it expands if you have activities and raffles and management involved. And it becomes not just a small thing of 10 or 12, it becomes 20, 25, 50 people involved in the whole process and what it means in getting the word out and getting people informed and helping to have things come back. And you hear questions, regularly about why should I, or, what has happened and how do you talk about it? And to me, I went, even though I'm in LE, I'm involved in the Markham Homage campaign, and I handed out to everybody my stack of pledge cards for people. But it's taking that 5 or 10 minutes to explain why I'm doing this. And I actually had somebody say, but you're so busy. And look at what you do in the position that you have, and you're down here giving this to me. Why do you do that? And I said, I do that because it's important, because it's my way of giving back. And if I have to work at night because I'm doing this during the day, it's a small price to pay for the benefit that it gives the community. And you don't recognize that people see that at times, right? You're down here when you're working and you're doing stuff, but you're taking the time to talk to me. And all of the volunteers do that, right? They all take their time to put posters up and to, stand there and do a 50-50 raffle with people and just say, hey, would you like to be involved in this? And there's so many more people than just the ECCs and the LEs that are involved in the higher ups in the businesses. The executives are really doing a great job at communicating the importance, and their support is critical too. So they're supporting the employees to take some time to do this, and it's a whole chain, right? It takes everybody. And it's just like the community. It takes the United Way and all their agencies, but it takes the rest of us from the top down to everybody to keep that commitment throughout the community and keep the community thriving and growing.
So what would be your message to the general public?
Wow, that's quite the question. My message is just the importance of it. I think it's not just about the financial piece. It's about improving our community. It's about helping everyone, from the children that have come into this world with no idea of what they're getting into, who need some services, but also the elderly and everybody in between that gets into a situation where they just need a little bit extra help. It's about giving back when you have the ability to do that and helping your community get stronger and get better. And you know what? An hour here, an hour there, it doesn't have to be a loaned employee, right? It doesn't have to be taking a quarter to a half of my week to do this. Any little bit of time that you can give to give back to help the community grow, I guess that's my message. That's what's important to me.
I love having you on the show, Jess, because you're really living out the Live United theme, which is to give, to volunteer, and to advocate. And I'm sitting here listening to you be a real advocate for people being involved and giving that time. And, if they can't afford to give a donation, sometimes giving that hour it makes such a difference. And, we have things from days of caring where people can come out for an hour, and services, you can connect with the services. We had on the show last week, WIC, and they're in need of volunteers to read to children. And, they said we just don't have enough people doing that. So great opportunities like that, even if you can just give an hour, and maybe it's just once that you can do that. But really getting out there, getting involved, and being part of really thinking about outside of ourselves. And sometimes that can be hard to do because the world can feel overwhelming.
Well, and I talked to my son after the training about volunteering at the community kitchen. And he said it's something that he would like to do. And that's a piece that I think about more now, of trying to get my children involved and getting them to see, so that it's not just when you get older and you become a working person in society that you give back, but also showing our children how important it is to help those who may be less fortunate. And I talked to him about going and having dinner there, which Phoebe Bray at the community kitchen had mentioned that we could all go and do. And his first response was, "Mom, I'm not going to go and take food from people who really need it, because we have food at home." And I said, yes, that's true, and we could give a donation to where we could go, but it's just good to go and see. But it's also important to recognize his feeling of it as, Mom, we need to help. And he really wants to go and help and see what we can do to donate. And maybe it's talking to him about going and reading to the kids at WIC, right? Because he reads to his little sisters all the time. But it's important for him to see. And for my children, I'm really not going to bring my 4-year-old twins to the community kitchen. I think they might do a little more damage than they do good at this age, but that's okay. We'll get them there as they get a little bit older. But it's also, every night at dinner, we talk about what was our favorite part of the day. And during the week of training, or actually it was the week after, my favorite part of my day that I got to talk about was going into Markham Homage and talking to our technical team, our IT team, and we have computers that we can now donate to the 100 Nights. And all it was for me was the asking, right? It's just taking the time to say, hey, do we have any extra computers that we could give so they could start training people on resume building or computer skills or something to help them in the workplace? And they said, yes, we do. We can give computers. So I went home that night and just felt really good that it wasn't me providing the computers, but it was me asking. And the kids are starting to see that, sometimes it just takes asking. What can we do to help you? What do you need? As you go through and trying to think more about others and the community, and less focused necessarily 100% of the time on your family, which is so easy to do, right? Because we're so busy. But that was a great feeling that day, to go home and be able to tell the kids that that was what had happened. So, and that's another way that Markham Homage is giving back, by having those computers and things that we don't necessarily need in the business, but giving them out to the community and being willing to provide something that provides much more than it would sitting in our warehouse.
And that, I know, has been valuable. We, at one point, collected all of those donations, those computer donations, at the United Way and distributed them. And it distributed out to 13 different agencies, providing them with some updated computers and some of the software even that was necessary, because we actually had one of the other local companies come in and put software on those computers for these services. So it's a wonderful network of people that come together. I know we have campaign breakfasts, and we utilize those as an opportunity to share how the campaign's going, look at some of the challenges, what are the opportunities and things. And I think one of the things the public may not recognize quite as much is that the campaign also takes place outside of the workplace. You are a loaned employee, you're really working with the businesses here in the community, but it takes more than just the businesses being a part of creating this safety net that you're talking about. So what do you hear when you're at those breakfasts?
What do I hear at the breakfasts? We have an update on how everything is going with the campaign. We talk about the challenges from an LE perspective, but we just talk about the community in general, how things are going with the community, what is resonating with the community, what the challenges are that they're having. We talked about the impact statement, collective impact, and how the United Way is working to combine the agencies and talk about where we can have the biggest impact. But we just have a discussion about the community in general a lot of times and what's happening and what they're seeing. And you also get to see how many volunteers there are, because every week there's new people that weren't here the week before or 2 weeks before, and it's just you recognize how big the pool is of people that are coming in to help support this initiative and help support the community.
And it requires a huge pool of people. I know right now we're beginning to recruit for our allocations process because we have folks like you out there working, raising money through the campaign, but those campaign dollars then have to be allocated out to these agencies. So the process is one where the agencies come in, they're seeking funding for these initiatives, but they're actually vetted. They're actually reviewed very, very thoroughly by a team of volunteers. That team of volunteers then recommends the funding allocation for that organization. So I know right now we're looking for even more volunteers to begin to engage in that.
And I think the allocations committee, to your point, is critical. It's not, that's another thing that hasn't been known by a lot of people, and I had a comment from somebody that I work with saying that they have someone close to them who lives near the community kitchen, and they see people going in that are very well dressed and look like they shouldn't be there. And so the perception was they just give food to anybody who wants it. And I said, actually, I learned about that this year, and I learned that not only is there an allocations committee, but each of the agencies have a vetting process that they use too. And you have to prove that you're in a certain income bracket to be able to utilize the services. In some ways, that's very sad to me that they have to prove it if they need it. But on the other hand, it also prevents some of the people from getting resources to take them away from the people who really need them. But the allocations committee was another eye-opening experience, that it takes a year, pretty much, to research, to go through, to understand what these agencies are providing so that you can feel good about the money that you're giving each of them and making sure that you're giving money to this one and how much you give to that one. And I've thought a lot about the allocations committee, and I expect at some point I'm probably going to get involved in that too, based on what I'm learning. But it's more involved than you realize when you're not as deeply involved in what's happening. And it's important, but it's time consuming, and it's understanding, and it's really feeling good about where that money goes, right? So the allocations team who have been talking about it say, we really feel good that we're providing the resources to the best places we can.
And I think the public, just for your information, we actually monitor where those resources go. Mm-hmm. So, right now you're actually raising funds for the 2015 decisions that have been made. So, our agencies are being funded right now. They're monitored throughout the year in terms of the impact that they're having and the results, and making sure they're on track for their goals and objectives that they laid out in their original proposals to that team of allocators. I do want to highlight that what the beauty of that process is, it's an all-volunteer team that makes those decisions. It's not the staff of the United Way. Our job is to really support both our agencies out there, to support our team leaders like you and other volunteers, and to create that network that you're talking about, and to really let people know about the good work that's going on out there and the impact that it has. We're excited both about the structure. We're going through a lot of change right now. We think, we've got a better ability now to really show those results to the community, and you're doing a super job of sharing that through your campaign at Markham Homage, where you're asking people to wonder about different services, and then I think you're providing answers to them, if I'm correct, about what those services are and the impact that they have in little stories.
And we're actually going further. We're doing a trivia contest, actually, with the information. So we're giving out prizes for people who can provide the answers. So we said, we want to get them to read them, and we figure if there's 50 posters, maybe they read a couple. But we're saying, you know what, if you do read them and go and research and find these answers, we'll give you prizes if you understand and if you can provide the answers. So that's the other piece that we're trying to push, giving some incentives, not just to have people read them, but have them look at them, have them understand, become more educated. So that piece is coming soon in our campaign. It'll be over the next week or two. But yeah, so another piece of giving incentives and trying to get people to read more and more about what's there. But you go down the hallway and they're everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's these posters, and it's really neat to see. And we've had feedback too. When we first put them out with all the questions, people said, wow, there's a lot of them. I actually read them. And I said, well, that's good. I'm hoping that you're reading them. But then they said, what's all the white space? Because people didn't understand we would be giving answers. And then we gave answers, and they went, oh, okay, now I understand even more. And then it's just building on that.
Fun stuff. We love to watch the campaigns running and folks like you leading those out there, because people do some pretty amazing events year to year around the theme.
And it is really neat, and it's fun. You know, I was at Melanson at 6 a.m. on Friday, and my first comment when I walked in the door was, it's dark out. You know, and they just looked at me, and I said, I'm not even usually up this time of the day, never mind here, awake, you know, going. But, you know, and then I got a couple of comments about how am I going to roof, you know, do roofing stuff dressed like that. And I said, well, I don't know. But there's a lot of give and take, and it's that relationship building, right? And being able to be there and showing that you're willing to be there at 6 a.m. when it's dark out and you're not planning to be there, and, you know, changing plans with your children so that you can go. But they recognize, too, that you're taking your time and you're planning things and you're doing stuff. And it's all about the cycle of communicating, of giving back, about how important everything is.
It is a big commitment, and we recognize that both for our loaned employees, for the businesses like Markham Homage sponsoring you to be a loaned employee, that it's a big commitment. And if you become part of the allocations process, it is. That team works over, you know, a 6-month period, evaluating, being trained, reviewing the different agencies, visiting them. And much like you visited the organization. So it really, it's a commitment, but as you're saying, one that's so rewarding in the long run. And I think, you know, we sometimes forget to build that into our lives. We need that feel-good factor in our lives. And as parents, I think we need to share that with our children, just as you're doing.
I agree. And the other thing with Markham Homage is every year, we've had loaned employees. Markham Homage has dedicated them every year, and I think they were actually involved in creating the process that started loaned employees way back when. I don't even know how many years ago, 20 plus years ago now?
I think so.
It's been a long time, but we always have at least one, if not two, loaned employees that are dedicated, and I think that's an important thing for the community too, to have the bigger employers or employers in general being willing to provide that time and give back, and they have for, like I said, years and years and years, even since before I was there. So,
and you know, I think the other thing is people need to remember that it could be $1 that makes a difference. I think lots of people think, oh, you know, I can't afford to give a big donation. It's not about a big donation. It's just about the donation that anyone makes, because $1, $2 makes a difference. And you know, we have a $2 million plus goal this year, which is for a community this size, you know, the Monadnock region, raising it is challenging to do, and we've been challenged for several years now to try to raise that kind of money. And as we said earlier, you know, the cutbacks continue from the federal and state level, and it really has impact on this safety net out there. So it behooves us as the local people to really make sure that we're somehow involved, we're somehow giving, we're somehow being a part of taking care of each other.
right, and we talked a lot at the loan employee meetings about the fact the 2.1 million, I actually know the 2.106234,
There you
right?
go.
Because we talk about the number a lot, but it's the fact that the 2.1 million is higher. It's 5% higher than last year, and it's less than the goal from last year, but it's still 5% more than we got. And that's something that's important to recognize too, though, that even though the goal has gone down, there's still a greater need, and we still need more money. And if everybody could give just 5% more than what they gave last year, so if you did $1 a week, I mean, you're talking about $1.05 a week. It's 5 extra cents from what you've done in the past, and those are things that are important to understand. The need is greater. Everything's growing. Everything's getting bigger, and we talk about corporate donations, can you increase it a little bit? How can you continue to give more? And unfortunately, right, the need isn't going down. The need is getting greater, so how can we continue to support that and grow? And it's also communicating to people. Some people just don't realize how great the need is. And so that one-on-one, that discussion, that just asking is a big deal, and it's important.
And we're asking you, public, to get involved, to give, to volunteer, to be an advocate for your fellow citizens, perhaps for your own family, and really be connected to this. When that pledge form comes into your town, I think a lot of people think if I'm not in a workplace, I don't need to give. Pledge forms go out to the towns as well. Mm-hmm. And, like we said, if you give that dollar, if every citizen in the Monadnock region actually gave $20, we would make goal.
Right, which is a big
which
deal.
is amazing.
Yeah.
When you think about that. But that dollar makes a difference. That $2 makes a difference, especially if that person hasn't given in the past. And as you said, I think you started out as a donor. Now you're a leadership giver, giving over $500 a year, and that is the biggest pool of people we have are the leadership donors. I think it equates to, we figured out at times, it's about $10 a week if you give that. You can be a leadership giver. And so it's not a huge amount when you think about it, but for some it may be because
Right.
they are in need of the services that are being provided. You did mention, and I really want to highlight this, somebody asking about, well, I saw somebody really nice going into the community kitchen or receiving these services. One of the things that we're seeing more and more with the services is that folks who are living on fixed income are really, really challenged to make ends meet. So they may look like they're doing okay, but the car breaks down. The furnace, something happens with the furnace. Fuel, being able to afford fuel for the winter can be a challenge. It may mean the difference between a person needing a food box so that they can pay for fuel or pay for that car repair so that they can get to work. So sometimes it's just balancing all those aspects of life. And, I think, we've talked a little bit about you may have a temporary need. We get folks here from the services talking about, it's sort of lifting someone up and getting them back on their feet at times. And then they're able to contribute, whether it's through being a donor or volunteer, and coming back and being a part of that. We've had Big Brothers Big Sisters talk about, they were recipients of that service, and now they're the Big Brothers Big Sisters. So people do get involved. We want to encourage you to continue to be involved. We are so thankful for people like you, Jess.
Thank you.
You are doing an amazing job out there. Can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing. Any last thoughts?
I guess just the last thought is you don't recognize the contribution you're making, even if it's not financial, and any little bit that you can do, financial or otherwise, is important to the community, and all it does is help your community grow and get stronger and stronger.
So I want to thank Markham Homage as well for loaning you out to the United Way campaign. Again, thank you. I want to thank you, audience, those that have already chosen to participate. As we said, we rely on hundreds of volunteers out there. We're thankful for what they contribute. They do make a difference. We're thankful to all the donors, and we encourage you to continue to be part of Living United, to give, to volunteer, to advocate. Thanks for joining us.